Today's lesson is on data displays. First, we're going to look at our key idea for line plots. A line plot uses a number line to show the number of times each value in a data set occurs. An X is placed above the number line for each data value. Line plots show how much data are spread out or grouped together. This is called the distribution of the data. This example here is a line plot, and the X above stands for the numbers that are in the data set. So this data set would have a 3, 2 4s, 3 5s, 6, 2 8s, and a 9. For our first example, we're making a line plot. The table shows the ages of people in a school library. Display the data in a line plot. Describe the distribution of the data. For our first step, we're going to draw a number line that includes the least and greatest values of the data set. The least age is 13, so as we look at our data, the smallest is 13, and the greatest age is 24. So the largest number in our data set is 24. So we'll make a number line that starts at 13 and goes all the way to 24 and includes all the numbers in between. So our second step is to place an X above the number line for each data value. So as you go through your data, you're going to place an X above the number that it stands for. So for 14, we'd go over to 14 and we'd put an X. Then we'd have 16, and we'd go to 16 and we'd put an X. 17, we'd put an X. 15, we'd put an X. 24, we'd put an X, and we would do the same thing for the rest of the data. If the data does not appear in our data set, so the number doesn't appear, then we would not have any X's above the number for the line plot, but we would still include those numbers in our number line. Now we would describe the distribution of the data. Most of the people are in their teens. 2 of the people are 24 years old. So you can see that most of the people are between 13 and 19, and then there's a couple that are 24. There are 2 that are 24. Now we have another key idea for histograms. A histogram is a bar graph that shows the frequencies of data values in intervals of the same size. The height of a bar represents the frequency of the values in the interval. Remember, the frequency is the number of data values in an interval. A frequency table groups the data values into intervals. This is an example of a histogram. It's a bar graph, but you'll notice along the bottom that we have intervals. This bar represents 0 to 9. This bar would represent 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and 40 to 49. This bar graph also has the bars touching each other. There's not any space in between the bars. For our second example, we're making a histogram. The frequency table shows the number of points that each student in a class earned on a 15-point quiz. Display the data in a histogram. So we have a frequency table that shows the number of points and how many times that occurred. So students that received 1 through 3 points, there were 2 students that received somewhere between 1 and 3. That means they could have gotten 1 point, 2 points, or 3 points. There were 0 students that had between a 4 and 6, so no one received a 4, 5, or 6. 6 students received between a 7 and 9. That means some students may have received a 7, some an 8, and some a 9. And then for 10 to 12 points, there were 10 students that received 10 to 12 points, so they could receive 10, 11, or 12. And then there were 9 students that received between 13 and 15, so they could have received a 13, a 14, or a 15. So now, for our first step, we draw and label the axes. So the bottom axes would be points, and these would have our intervals. So 1 to 3 would be an interval, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, and 13 to 15. Now, along the side, we have our frequency, so how many students receive those points. This graph goes up by 2's. For our second step, we're going to draw a bar to represent the frequency of each interval. So if we look back at our frequency table, we're going to see there were 2 students that received between 1 and 3. So our bar for 1 to 3 would be 2 students, so it would go up to 2. For 4 to 6, there were 0 students, so we will not make a bar to represent 4 to 6, but we still need to include that interval on our histogram. 7 to 9 had a frequency of 6, 10 to 12 had a frequency of 10, and 13 to 15 had a frequency of 9. Remember, there is no space between the bars of a histogram, so our bars are right next to each other. We do have a space here, and that's because there was nothing for 4 to 6. Also make sure that you include a title for your histogram. Don't forget to fill out your notes, and remember to watch the video again if needed.